we know if Rubio is going to be here?
I don't.
Okay. It's 6 p.m. I'd like to call the Special Planning Commission meeting, May 25th, to order.
Alina has joined.
All right. May the clerk please take roll?
Commissioner Bushnell,
Here.
Commissioner Seals,
Here.
Commissioner Sagel,
Here.
Commissioner Rubio.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Giddings, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Giddings. Does the Commission have any adjustments to tonight's meeting agenda? If the Commission would like to discuss anything under the consent agenda, such as the minutes, they need to be pulled out and put under new business at this time. All right, hearing no changes to the agenda will stand as presented. We'll begin with our reports. And let's see who we can go. Let's go first with City Deputy Administrator Crystal Niker.
All right, a couple things to report here. We have 2,341 business license, which is 10 more than last week, so we've been looking at those every week. Want the numbers to go up, not down. Memorial Day, we are going to have the celebration at the wall, so at 1 o'clock on Memorial Day, if you want to go up there to the wall, that's a great place to spend your afternoon. 4th of July, we are doing a parade, and we are getting quite a bit of engagement from businesses here, as well as different organizations and some from Anchorage, so we should have a pretty good turnout for the parade on the 4th of July. We have been doing some ribbon cuttings for new companies that have moved within the city. We did Alaska Water, which is over here on Main Street. We did the we're going to do the Gilly Learning Center, which is in the new mall by Matsu Family Restaurant, and then Mac Federal Credit Union, June 28th, who's also sponsoring the fireworks for 4th of July. So that's the update.
All right, thank you. City Public Works Director, Archie Giddings.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, we've got two projects out to bid right now. One is airport pavement maintenance, which is the runway and taxiways, just simply doing some crack repair and crack sealing. And then our road paving, strip paving, gravel roads, that's going out. That's a fiscal year worth of a contract, so it'll go into June next year, and there's 3.7 miles identified in there. Paved gravel roads, and we're going to keep doing that each year until we get all the roads paved.
Okay. Thank you, sir. City Attorney, Mr. Schwartz.
No reports today, sir.
All right, thank you. And City Planner, Ms. Crawford.
No report, thank you.
All right. At this point in time, we're going to begin our public participation. We'll have 3 minutes per person. Anyone wishing to step forward to discuss anything that is not on the agenda tonight can do so now. Please write your name and contact information and sign-up sheet and state your name for the record. And if you could, please let us know whether you live in the city limits. So if anybody's here to talk about the Committee of the Whole, where we're going to talk about landscaping requirements moving forward, doing some revisions there, this is a really good time to say things before we enter the Committee of the Whole, because you won't be able to say anything until after, if you had something to comment on that. So I'll open up the floor. All right. Nobody's stepping forward, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. There was nobody online, correct? Okay. We'll go to the next item on the consent agenda, but before I do, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Sagel, make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Seals, I second.
All right, motion has been made to approve it. Is there any objections? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. We'll begin with our new business. Ms. Crawford, would you please introduce item number 1 and provide the staff report?
Certainly. For the record, Tina Crawford, City Planner. The first item and the only public hearing item we have on the agenda tonight is conditional use permit number 21-03 and the associated resolution 21-05. The applicant is Andrew Samasco with Architects Alaska. And the owner is CPB Alaska LLC. The request is for conditional use permit approval to construct a 12,571 square foot office building and approval to have a maximum building height of 40.5 feet, which is 5.5 feet taller than the maximum amount permitted without conditional use approval, which is 35 feet. The property is located at 800 East Railroad Avenue. It is Block 7 of the Floyd Revised Subdivision. It's approximately 1.74 acres. It is zoned commercial with a generally commercial and business future land use, and the surrounding zoning in every direction is commercial. So in your package, beginning on page 7, you have the staff report. It has findings to all of the general approval criteria in section 16.16.050, which are the Planning Commission is required to consider when approving a use. I won't go in and read every individual finding. I will state that the findings are predominantly that they're met or that they'll be met with the conditions of approval that are proposed in the resolution. So staff is recommending approval with the conditions. I'll read into the record the conditions. They're beginning on page 7, again in the staff report, or if you want to follow along in the reso, it's on page 57. The first one is that the development, and I'll paraphrase slightly, the development must be consistent with the site plans, elevation plans that are attached to the resolution as Exhibit B. Any changes are submitted to the city planner for review. Substantial modifications will be brought back forward to the Planning Commission for review and approval. And any substantial improvements may trigger additional requirements to address traffic impacts or anything from the use. The second condition is to submit an updated site plan prior to construction that provides curbs or other structural barriers around all landscape parking islands and provides the required 25-foot drive aisle in the southern parking lot. The third one is that they submit electrical plans and cut sheets for the exterior and parking lot lighting as required in the city code. That they submit an updated landscape plan prior to construction that revises the height of the spruce trees to reflect the requirement to be 10 feet tall. That relocates the required hedge for parking areas along South Wasilla Street and East Susitna Avenue on the south side of the building from the perimeter landscape bed to the edge of the parking spaces to provide the required screening, and to correct the labels for the shrubs to be consistent with the legend and provide the required parking landscape islands at the termination of the parking rows at the north and east ends of the parking lot on the south side of the building. The fifth one is that landscaping and landscaping structural requirements must be installed consistent with the requirements in the city code. The sixth one, that they submit the required landscape guarantee prior to construction that meets the requirement in the code. Number 7 is that they must submit the plans to the Borough Fire Chief's office for review for compliance with all fire codes, building codes, and emergency access. The 8th one is that the applicant must coordinate with the City Public Works Department to obtain the permit approvals needed for water and sewer. The 9th one addresses signage, that they must submit a sign permit. And the last one is after construction, they must submit an as-built survey. In speaking, the applicant's obviously here and they can speak to these conditions. These conditions just arose from a tight turnaround from trying to accommodate a development schedule and to get a project going this year. There's nothing on the site plan that would preclude them from including these landscape islands or these minor, they're basically minor adjustments. The conditions are just added there to create the list of requirements that must be done before they start construction. So in your package on page 17, you have the site plan that shows you the building, parking, the access points. Page 18, you have the landscape plan, and page 19, you have the elevation drawings, the color renderings, I should say. In your package further on, you have the full detail sheets, but these are the typical ones that you look at. And also on pages 15 and 16, you have the zoning map and an aerial map showing you where the location of the property is. Tonight, you have 3 handouts in front of you, and they were provided electronically to the commissioners, so hopefully Commissioner Rubio was able to access those. If not, we can try and get them to her.
I was, yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
They came in today, so obviously after the packet, so you have those as handouts at your place. And that's all that I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, do any of the commission members have any questions at this point in time?
No.
I do. This Commissioner Bushnell, can you point out, you said that in the conditions, as far as the plans go, there was a, here we go, number 2, submit an updated site plan construction for the structural barrier. Which part of the plan are we talking about here? In the southern parking areas, so that would be...
Oh, you're talking condition number 2?
Yep, condition number 2.
And is it A or B?
B.
B. Provide the 25, yes. So if you look at the parking lot that's closest to East Susitna on the drawing on page 17, the drive aisle width between the 2 rows of parking is not 25 feet. So they'll have to move that southernmost row of parking closer to Susitna to gain the additional feet that they need to provide the 25-foot drive aisle.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, I understand now. I was thinking it was a barrier for some reason in my mind. I just wasn't clicking, and it is now. Okay. Any other questions from the commission members?
No.
Okay.
At this time.
All right. At this point in time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward, make a presentation. Yes. Yes. At this point in time, you will have 5 minutes to make the presentation.
Okay.
Or, yeah. Thank you. Yes, 5 minutes. And then we'll open it up to public comment, and then give you another 5 minutes after that.
Okay, thank you. My name's Andy Samasco. I'm one of the principals at Architects Alaska with our office here in Wasilla. The application is for a conditional use permit based on the fact that the building is over 10,000 square feet and it's exceeding the 35-foot limit on height a bit. So I really don't have, other than what Tina has commented on, I really don't have a lot of additional information. I suppose we could talk a little bit about the proposed use. The top floor will be occupied at this time when it's done by an attorney here in Wasilla. The other 2 floors are unfinished space right now. They'll be open for tenant improvements, so he'll be the landlord, and we'll be getting additional tenants in the building who will be the same type of uses as his building, basically an office building, so professional offices type space. All of the comments that Tina mentioned as far as conditions for approval are not surprises to us. We're kind of aware of them, and like Tina said, it was we're on a tight schedule, so we were able to go forward and make the changes that are requested and get the rest of the paperwork put in that are requested, and then follow up so we can get going on construction as soon as possible. The plans are in review right now with the Central Mat-Su Fire District, so that is underway as well. And they actually have done a preliminary review of the site plan, so they're able to get their, it was approved basically for getting their fire apparatus vehicles access to the building if there's ever an emergency there. So other than that, I really don't have a whole lot more to add to what Tina has mentioned on her review.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this point in time, we invite a private person supporting or opposing the proposal. The public comment portion of the public hearing is now open for conditional use permit 21-03. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? You'll have 5 minutes to provide your comments. Please write your name, contact information on the sign-up sheet, and state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes. Also, please, for us, let us know whether you live inside the city limits.
Thank you, Commissioners and staff people. My name is Tim Johnson. I'm a resident of Wasilla. I'm also City Council Seat C. But I'm speaking to you tonight not as a council member, but as a private citizen. As the city grows, we on the City Council, of course, are always attuned to and really accepting new, we're on. We're always looking for new businesses coming into our community. We enjoy and like to see development happening in our city because it expands our base, our commercial base. It makes our city more attractive to residents. The whole concept of this particular building is sort of exciting to us. I mean, we're offering a lot of growth and some potential. On the flip side of that very coin, though, we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our residents in a thoughtful but yet cost-effective manner. We do not want to put undue requirements onto the developer just to meet all of the public concerns. But on the other hand, some concerns should be listened to. So let me start with the actual list here of things that have been met under the existing ordinances. Let us start first with, on page 3, item 11, drainage. I'm a resident. I live right on the corner of Wasilla and Susitna. On the other side of Susitna is a big ditch. That ditch overflows, and that intersection there becomes a big mud puddle at the end of winter time. During heavy rains, the water has nowhere to go, and it flows directly down Wasilla, right into the area. There is no real storm drainage in the area, so I would say, while you say the condition is met, from my perspective as a resident, I would say it is far from met, in that we really need much better drainage, possibly a storm sewer or something like that, which will handle the water runoff down Wasilla. The next point, off-site requirements, number 14 on page 4. Staff finding says this criteria is met. No buffering is required since there is no adjoining residential uses. Unless I live in a bank building, I would stand to differ with you. I live in a residence. One of the comments that I have is if this building goes up with a 26-foot offset from the road, I'm going to be staring at a 3-story building out my window. Now, we are asking for a conditional use permit to extend that up. And to be perfectly honest with you, that's probably acceptable. However, if we really look at the site plan, is what we've done is we've pushed that building right up against Wasilla, leaving the whole west end of that lot basically undeveloped and unused. So my request to you is simple. Move that plan an additional 20 feet to the west. You still have plenty of room to do the parking, and your site plan remains virtually untouched, as long as, when you do that, you're going to move the driveway access off of Susitna to a much safer location. The current site plan is going to allow the driveway and Wasilla to be within feet of each other. While it meets the code, I don't think that is the safest situation we've got. On the next page, page 5, point number 16, it says, this area does not have sidewalks. That is true. However, the sidewalk is not required since the proposed development is an office building and there are no schools, playgrounds, shopping centers, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, I don't know who did the planning, but 2 doors down from this particular building happens to be the Matsu School District office building. This building is used considerably by students who are walking up and down Wasilla and Railroad Avenue to and from. These students are primarily homeschool students, including, by the way, my grandchildren. So I know what I'm talking about. This is a school, although it is not a formal school in the sense that we have a continual use on it. Its uses in the summertime are particularly heavy because a lot of people will be sending their children to the particular school for additional development.
Sir.
Did I use up my five minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So I would appreciate you looking at my comments which were previously submitted
Thank you,
and
sir.
discuss that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Janice Pritchard, and I am a resident of the city of Wasilla. The developer answered like 3 or 4 of my questions. The one thing that is, when I read this, is like 5 feet. What's with the 5 feet? Okay, as the wife of a general contractor, 5 foot is not even quite half a floor. And if it hadn't been for that 5 feet, we would not be here because it would have come underneath your code. It would have been at the 35 feet. We would all be here and we would not have these concerns. And so I don't know what the 5 feet is for. That's a conundrum for me. He also said that the top floor is going to be for an attorney, which means clients, which means open to the public. Now, the packet states that it meets code as far as parking, meaning that there's enough parking space, which is 42 and then 2 for handicapped. Is there going to be enough parking for employees and the public? Because we already have a problem with the real estate company that sits right next door in the wintertime because they don't have place to put their snow. And so when they have these massive meetings and there's 35 or 40 cars there, the cars are parked so half of the car is sticking out into Susitna. And so you got to drive around it. Okay, so that's a concern. So I'm looking at the parking. The traffic is also another problem. You've got an ingress, egress, one on Susitna and one on Railroad. Well, that's fine. But you've opened up South Susitna, so you can go up to the Home Depot. We've already got the traffic going up there. Are people going to be coming out of this building, going halfway through the condo complex to go up toward the Home Depot and probably out toward the depot itself because that's where you moved it? Or are they going to actually turn and go back out toward KGB or go around on Railroad and go to the KGB to the parks that way? So I have a problem with traffic because right at the corner of Susitna and Wasilla is a school bus stop. School bus comes down Susitna, turns down Wasilla, goes down Railroad. Okay? So with the children in our complex, I'm really concerned for their safety and the amount of traffic. So Mr. Johnson is correct when he says we should probably be putting some sidewalks in there because these roads are not very wide. Wasilla is not even a city street. It belongs to the Homeowners Association. Susitna is a city street, although it's maintained by the homeowners. I have a problem because I'm not sure what kind of construction this building is. Is it concrete? Is it wood? What is it? Is it sprinklered? Because it is so close to the residential, and with the winds that we get in Wasilla, if there's a fire, where's it going to go? It's going to go right into those condos, is where it's going, and the trees that they're going to be, or wherever. So what kind of construction is this? Okay, I didn't see anything in there. It might be, I might have missed it. There's like 100 pages in here. It's kind of hard to read in like 5 or 6 hours. So that's my problem. And lastly, since it's going to be a office building open, basically 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, that leaves the weekends for untoward activities, considering we're off the beaten path. This area is not patrolled. And if there's not any kind of fencing or security or anything of that nature, I am concerned we're going to have, especially with summer coming and children and teenagers, not children, but teenagers and even adults, not being in school and not working, whatever, that their parking lot could become a place for not just partying, but activities that may not be lawful. And I don't want that where I live, which is why I live where I live. I don't like development. I don't like any of this. I don't like change. That's just me personally, okay? I realize it's necessary, okay? I love those trees there. It's a beautiful lot. The birds and the little animals, I love it, okay? So I just wanted you to know I'm not overly pleased with this, but I know that it's sometimes you have to have things like this.
Mrs. Pritchard, thank you for your time. All right.
Good evening, council members and staff. It's great to be here. My name is Stu Graham. I am a resident of the city, and most of you have seen me before sitting in this very chair. So I too am a resident of Lakeview condominiums. I sit on the board of directors as the treasurer, and I'm very familiar with the development there. I do take, I won't say I take exception to one thing that the city planner said about the surrounding areas are all zoned commercial. That is true, but you've got a 52-unit apartment complex or condominium complex right across the street. So there does need to be some difference to that. If that area were to be redeveloped, it would be developed commercial, but it was developed as residential. There's no commercial in there at all, and it's right there. Also, there was a mention of no playgrounds or anything like that. Mr. Johnson talked about the street right down the road, and the Condominium Owners Association has been working with the city. We're developing a park, which is also just down the road, right as you turn off of East Susitna, kind of onto South Susitna there. So I definitely support the concept of sidewalks. If you have sidewalks there, people are looking for people to be on the sidewalk as opposed to a driveway that just comes straight out into the area there. As far as the main issue, which is the height of the building, wanting to go to 40.5 feet instead of 50 feet, I believe the code says that the height of the building is measured from the mean or from the average height of the lot. Well, this is a significantly sloped lot, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the neighborhood, but it's a pretty significantly sloped lot. So 40.5 foot building is probably going to be more than 50 feet tall on the high end. So I just don't see that as being very compatible with the surrounding uses. There's an office building just down the street where the realtors meet. That's within the 35 feet. I think it's right at the 35 feet. I just don't see that the additional height being compatible with the surrounding uses, which is the one commercial building and the 52 residential units right next door. I also have a concern, if we look at page of your packet, page 36, which is the new office building sheet C1.0. If we look on the east side of that, you can see South Wasilla Street there. There's a little bit of a setback, and then there's a 15-foot utility easement, and then between the utility easement and I'm looking at page 36 of your packet, or at least of what was published online. You can see there is a box there that says sewer service. So if I may approach, Mr. Commissioner, I have some photos I'd like to share with you. reason I shared those photos with you is you can see this is what the city of Wasilla currently considers to be acceptable when it comes to sewer service. These are lift stations. You can see the photo on the first page is a lift station. It's not enclosed. It's built on plywood, and given today's lumber prices, the plywood may be worth more than the electrical equipment on there. But it's not very attractive. And you can see a house in the background there. Well, that's the mayor's house, you know. And I find it amusing that the mayor would have something, so unregulated in her side yard there. The next page is a lift station which is in the condominium complex. Once again, you can see it's just electrical equipment, freestanding electrical equipment. There's no enclosure around it or anything like that. Third photo is another smaller lift station. I'm sorry, Archie, I didn't give you a copy of these.
I'm very familiar with it.
Okay. I bet you are. Is a much smaller lift station in a residential area. And then the next photo shows a transformer enclosure from MEA. The photo after that shows a larger transformer enclosure from MEA. The photo with the stainless steel looking box in it, that's a traffic control box, which is fully enclosed with the exception of the alarm beacons on it. And then the last photo shows, once again, a lift station of a smaller caliber attached to a commercial building as you go through. So I would like there to be a condition 11 that says sewage, wastewater, lift control equipment must be enclosed on all four sides, plus the top and bottom of the enclosure.
Stu.
A visual alarm beacon may be placed outside the enclosure. Thank you.
You know the rules. Come on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Just so everyone knows, I'm consistent with everybody. The clock ticks, you're done. Is there anybody else that would like to come forward and testify at this time? All right, I'm going to invite the applicant back up. See if he can address some of the items that have been discussed by the public. And once you finish your 5 minutes, that is the point in time that the commission members may have questions for you.
Well, thank you for your questions. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Some of them, since they're off-site impacts, I don't know that we can commit to creating some additional construction in the streets right away. So we'll maybe have to talk with Tina and Archie about that. So first of all, drainage. The Wasilla Code requires that all site drainage remain on site rather than being poured out in the street. So this site plan has retainage ponds, and where we, excuse me, where it drains, it'll be an on-site retainage of the stormwater from the site, where it'll either be perked into the ground or evaporate, which is what we've done in some of the other major projects in Wasilla. As far as buffering between the residential use and a commercial use, we do have quite a few trees and shrubbery planted along that side of the site along South Wasilla. One of the things that we need to realize, though, that a multifamily use project is a commercial use. It's not necessarily a residential use as far as zoning laws are concerned. So when we look at projects, we would, if it was zoned residential across the street, we would have put the kind of buffer that's required between zoning and a commercial development. But to minimize the impact, we are providing quite a bit of landscaping along that side of the street. As far as accessing the driveway at Susitna and Wasilla, and the driveway that comes up to there, to redesign the site now would be a pretty major impact on not only our schedule but our design fees. And when we do start off with a project like this, we do look at what's required by code, and that's how we've designed this, is to meet the current code. As far as the building height goes, actually the number that is used in the application is measured from the lowest level, which would be on the north side of the building, up to the peak of up to the height of the roof on the north side of the building. So since the building is set in the ground, approximately 13 feet or so between the upper level and the lowest level and the middle level, which would be accessed from the south side. The building is not really that tall overall. So there's and if that's how it's put in the application, but if we were to go and figure the average height of the building or the height of the building based on the average slope of the site, we would be under that 40. That would be quite a bit less than that. I don't know if it'd be less than 35, but it would be less than the 40 feet. We are providing snow storage on site, so as far as parking lot use in the wintertime, we won't be losing parking spaces. I'm not quite sure how to respond to some of the access to some of the other commercial areas that are off-site as far as traffic goes and stuff. We basically looked at the project as it pertains to the current zoning ordinance and the land uses around the site. Excuse me. The construction type is type 5A, which means it's a 1-hour fire-resistant building. Wood construction is not sprinkled. I've heard a few comments around here wondering if the building's sprinkled. It's not, but we are. It does meet current fire codes as far as the way it's constructed. I don't know how to address the concerns about using the parking lot on weekends, other than the fact that there's a lot of businesses in Wasilla that don't have occupied parking lots over the weekend. So it would be, I would imagine, it would be fall in kind of that same category. I think that because of the site's location, it's pretty easy to see what's going on there from the Parks Highway. So, I mean, it's not like we're remotely located and there's not a lot of ability to observe what's going on there. And we would like to rely on the Wasilla Police Department to help out in those matters. Again, sidewalks to the Matsu Charter School. Again, that's an off-site major impact if we were required to provide sidewalks, so that's something that we would need to deal with the city. Sewer service. I agree, the tall concrete wall in this one particular picture and all the bollards around it, all the paneling, all the lights and things like that need to be mounted can be mounted on the building, so that would address that issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. At this point in time, please stay up here. I'm going to ask the commission members if they have any questions for you.
Commissioner Seals, the actual buffering between the condo place looks to me like it should be adequate. My concern would be the height of the trees eventually.
Maybe I could refer to our landscape architect, Marie Hulse. She could let us know what the expected height of those trees would be once they're matured.
Mr. Chair, if I can just share with the commission, because I know we still have some newer commission members, just to clarify for the record, the code does not require screening and buffering between residential and commercial when it's separated by a roadway. So there is no code requirement currently to do that. They do have the required 10-foot perimeter landscape bed with the required plantings and height that's required in the code. But I understand that it is residential, but the code specifically says if it's separated by a road that screening and buffering is not required. And then mechanical equipment that is ground level, the code does require screening and buffering, but if it's mounted to the building, then it doesn't.
Thank you.
And to address the concern about the lift station that's alongside the road there, that would basically be, if you look in part of these pictures here, first one you see a little round concrete cap off to the side. That's about the extent of what would be exposed along the street there, and that would be buffered with plants around it. These types of fixtures here are typically mounted on the building. They're just electrical connections, so it's just wire. They don't have to be right next to the septic tank. They do need to be in a location though where people can see the red light flashing, because that tells you got a problem with your septic tank. You need to come out and address it.
Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Okay.
So about how tall, you want to answer?
I'm sorry. So, what were your concerns about the tree? This is Murray Hulse.
I was just wondering what type of tree you were planting and how high they were going to get.
So we have a variety of deciduous trees.
Marie, if you could, Marie.
Murray, I need you in the mic.
Push the mic over and state your name.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, this is Murray Hulse with Corvus Design. So what we have planned along the street frontage are Acer platanoides, which is a Helena maple, paperbark birch, and a quaking aspen. I guess they're all medium-sized trees in height, so they'll get between 25 and 30 feet tall max. Of course, the paper birch and the quaking aspen will be more around 20 feet tall. But
That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Any other commission questions at this point in time?
Yes, Commissioner Sagel. One of the persons that came up and spoke had a concern with the height of the building and blocking their view. So can you kind of talk us through how that's been alleviated, or if it's going to be in the sight line of any of the residents?
Well, yes, if you live along Wasilla, you will be able to see the building from your condo. I don't know if anybody that develops anything along Wasilla will not eventually impact the view from the condominiums. The main view, obviously, as far as we even considered the view substantially when we designed the building, because the view is to the north across Wasilla Lake. And this project will not impact that view at all.
Question for you on page 19, the big site drawing.
Okay.
I was trying to determine, because one of the questions is the height, and so you said at the front of the building, and I'm assuming the front of the building and the lower parking lot, the height of the building is 41.5. So from the house, from the houses looking across the street, which would be the middle to the top of the back of the building, what I refer to the top back of the building, the East Susitna Avenue side, which of these pictures best depicts that, and what would be the height there?
The problem with those pictures is they don't show the land. That's just the pictures of the building.
They don't show the tapering. That's why I was having a...
Yes, it slopes up. That one that's here on the audience's upper left, your...
Upper...
To your...
This one.
There you go.
So that would be the northeast view?
Yeah, northeast view. The corner that is closest to the center of the picture is the lowest area, and then the grade actually comes along and then slopes up to the back of the building there, where it goes up about 12 feet or so.
So my question is so the red part in the center of that picture, the gray and then the blue, that first floor is underground? Is that ground level?
The back side of it is. The front side, the north side is not. The back side is.
The side that's closest to...
The side that's closest to the condominium starts down at the lowest level.
At that lower level?
At East Railroad Avenue elevation, essentially.
Okay.
Up a little bit because it slopes up. And then it slopes uphill towards East Susitna Avenue. So by the time you get up to East Susitna Avenue, that first floor is buried buried back into the site. So from the East Susitna side, it looks like a 2-story building. From the other side, it looks like a 3-story building.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if you
Yes.
look on page 42 in your package, you'll see the actual the cuts and the way they interact with the property from the north, south, east, and west.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for.
So if you look at the east elevation, and it does run close to grade, but then we start wrapping up the building and going around the corner to the north side. And then by the time we get to the north side, we're up at the middle level.
Okay, so just on the east side, the impact to the houses, potential condos directly across the street, there is a potential 3-story building impact on their view shed?
There is, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. The other question that I had, and I know it's a conditional use, one of the concerns that was written in was about the type of lighting, because this plan doesn't have a lighting spec in it. And one of the things they were talking about is low lighting has their, you're going to have to submit something per the code, but for the matter of this hearing, has that been thought out?
Yes, it has, and it's all, I can't give you the exact fixture cut right now, but it's all high cutoff lighting so that the light doesn't shine off the property.
As they refer to as no view loss or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And I assume that is a building like this would be the code addresses a little bit of that light, correct?
Yeah, the
Okay.
code does address it in the criteria dealing with off-site impacts. They cannot direct lights toward the residential areas.
Okay.
Now, it does not address the dark sky, which was a comment. The code does not require dark sky lighting. It just requires you not to create light pollution.
For everybody's education, can you please give me a definition for dark sky lighting?
It's lighting that basically keeps it down at the ground and doesn't create that glow, so...
So I can't see
Hopefully
Home Depot from my house on the lake? Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's something the city hasn't adopted, so...
Okay.
It just deals with the direct visual impact.
Okay. Does this site plan call for any lighting between the building and the Wasilla Street?
There'll be lighting that covers the parking areas so that it's
Just the
they're
park,
lit.
but not the side of the, probably some...
I don't think there's no lighting that shines up on the building to light the building or anything.
No
like that.
backlights?
No.
Okay. So the closest would be the upper lot and the lower lot near the corners, near the intersections.
Yeah, and that's all, and then, again, that's all lighting that's directed down to the
Down.
parking lot.
Okay.
It's not directed anywhere else.
All right, and other concerns, the drainage. One of the things I would like some clarification on, and just because I had to deal with it in that area, and I know all about the puddle across the street, but I also know that this lot slopes down and away. So its impact on that puddle should be negligible because the water shouldn't flow out of that area into that street. But are you doing anything to pick up the water as it's coming down Susitna, if it is coming down Susitna on your side of the street, as it hits your lot? Or how is that going to run through?
Well, I would have to double check with our civil engineer to
Okay.
see if that's what he's done, but typically if it's flowing on, the way we would look at it, if it flows onto the property, it's our water, and we got to deal with it rather than having it flow across and back out. Now, I can't speak to the west end of the site where we're kind of leaving it alone, but where it's coming through, where it's being developed, that drainage will be picked up and retained
Okay.
on site.
So anything coming down the street that potentially could enter into your driveway was not going to be coming out and keep going down the street? Okay. So it will resolve in some ways. It will resolve a little bit of it on that side. Okay. All right. Commissioner Rubio, do you have any questions?
I do not at this time. I grew up on 415 Talkeetna Street, so I know
Okay.
all about that area.
Yes, you
too.
did. You need to grade your street more. It's got the biggest potholes in town.
This is true.
Yes. All righty. At that point in time, we're going to close the testimony. And what I am looking for is a motion from one of the commission members to address this.
The resolution. This is Commissioner Seals. I make a motion that we consider the resolution.
I need a full motion of
Reading.
reading the whole thing. Yep. I know. You're special.
Wasilla Planning Commission Resolution Serial Number 21-05, a a resolution of the Wasilla Planning Commission approving conditional use permit number 21-03 to construct a 12,571 square foot office building and approval to have a maximum building height of 40.5 feet, which is 5.5 feet taller than the maximum permitted 35-foot height. Wasilla Municipal Code 16.24.030, parentheses A, parentheses 6, located on Block 7, Floyd Reside, RSB.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Sajal, second.
All right, we have a motion approving this conditional use permit on the floor. Would you like to start?
This is Commissioner Seals. I vote to approve this resolution.
Do you have, I mean, we're not voting right now, but you're speaking for it, but do you have any comments?
I have no comments
Okay.
at this time.
Commissioner Sajal, only concern I had just with the height, I know somebody had mentioned what the additional 5 feet was for, and that it's really not. So I don't know if that had to do with the slope of the building, and the gentleman mentioned that as the building goes up toward the other side, that, you know, that first floor goes down. So I don't know if that was...
The comment, this Commissioner Bushnell, the gentleman that brought the information testified that the measurement was from the street level, the lowest point on the lot, so ground level at the base. So the height of the building is 41.5 feet. Not getting into, I mean, this could be a question that could be asked, but not getting into construction, but it's a flat roof, and you have an architectural effect that is taking it up. I don't know if that's the majority of that rise, but you're going to be borderline on most of it to go 3 stories and provide the proper recesses inside the building per floor to address heating, ventilation, plumbing, etc. And on a 3-story building like this, you are going to have solid floors in between levels. One of the things that I did here, one of the concerns that I'd like to at least talk about on the record amongst the commissioners and see if they have any concerns about this, was a building like this next to the condos, a fire issue, and it was built. It's being built to code. The prevailing winds in that area are actually, I would believe that. Well, no, I won't even. I'm not even going to go there because I live on the other lake, and it goes both ways. In the winter, your prevailing winds are going to. The danger to the building is the condos, and in the summer, in an afternoon breeze, you have the onshore breeze that starts about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it goes the other way. So it blows from the building to the condos, and I watch that breeze each day. So the fire rating of this building it's not designed to have tenant uses in it that are fire restrictive, and this is more just for people that understand the office nature. Now, if it was a restaurant, if it was a retail environment where we needed more parking, more things like that, because the parking would ramp up, and so would the fire protection inside that building, because you have more uses that have potential fire hazards, and that's when fire marshal starts making decisions and you have to go to the sprinklers. Professional office buildings, they don't. And for disclosure, I do manage a couple of Class A buildings like this that are not sprinklered, that are large. And there is a concern. We have our parking lights, we leave them on during the winter time. There is concerns with parking lots. Building owners always have that concern. But most of your businesses, even professional businesses, have a tendency to work on the weekends, and they work later hours. They are around, and people will be aware of it. As this area develops, the City Planning Commission, the City of Wasilla has been involved with developing the properties on all sides of this condo development. There will be more commercial, a lot more commercial, and a lot more activity in the area. And Susitna Street will have to be addressed. especially when and I think it is being addressed when we get to the closing Railroad Avenue as it cuts over to Main Street as they create the east-west couplets. East-west couplets? North-south, thank you. North-south couplets, thank you. As soon as I said it, I knew I was off. So this area is going to go through some growing pains. We understand that as it goes. And what we'd like to see is people put their best foot forward in trying to develop a really nice aesthetic and take in consideration their neighbors. Seeing what I see and knowing that some of the landscaping is being addressed, has to be changed. The lighting still has to be addressed and has to meet the code, which addresses some of the things. I don't think that we can ask the building to be moved at this point in time because it does meet the code. So it's not, I understand the concern, but I don't think we have a legal ground to say, please do this. So that would be my opinion on that. So I don't have any other comments. I've pretty much laid out my thoughts so people know what I'm thinking. If anybody else, Mrs. Rubio, do you have any thoughts, concerns?
I actually think you've hit them all.
Okay. So at this point in time, I would like the clerk to do a roll call vote for us, since we have Ms. Rubio online.
Commissioner Seals,
I vote to approve the resolution.
Commissioner Sajel,
I vote to approve the resolution. Resolution.
Commissioner Rubio,
I vote to approve.
Commissioner Bushnell,
I vote to approve. The Wasilla Planning Commission approves resolution serial number 21-05, a resolution of the Wasilla Planning Commission approving conditional use permit number 2103 to construct a 12,571 square foot office building and approval to have the maximum building height of 40.5 feet, which is 5.5 feet taller than the maximum permitted 35-foot height. WMC 16.24.030, parentheses A6, located on Block 7, Floyd Revised, re-subdivided. Thank you. Bear with me, I lost my agenda. Go. I knew it was there. All right. At this point in time, we're to Committee of the Whole to continue discussions regarding the revisions to landscape regulations for industrial zone lots and other minor amendments. I need a motion to enter into the Committee of the Whole to discuss.
Commissioner Seals, I make a motion that we enter Committee of the Whole.
Commissioner Sajel, second.
All right. Any objections? Hearing none, we enter Committee of the Whole at 6:58. Mrs. Crawford, do you have any comments regarding these items?
I'll just let you know that you had a handout tonight. It was emailed to you also. It's moving toward the strike-through and underline format. That's what the shape that it's in now, and it'll continue down this path as we have discussions. In the particular printout, it makes the font kind of small. I'm going to be lucky if I can read it, but if you look at it electronically, you'll be able to zoom in and you'll see the comments that are larger.
This document came out
Today.
late this afternoon?
It did.
Okay, because I saw the comments came through, but I had not seen this.
Yeah, it came through later.
Okay.
So, yes,
All right.
it was. So I wanted you to have it digitally so you can look at it from home and then you can start drafting comments at that point.
I have a question. I was reading the digital copy earlier. and there's areas that are highlighted in red. Are those changes?
I'm not sure what color it came through, so let's look on page.
Well, it's highlighted in a color,
Yeah.
so, and I don't see any of these are highlighted.
Yeah, I printed it out in black and white. So
Okay.
The strike through and underline is in blue ink. However, out in the right-hand column, that grade column, there is
Yeah,
a comment,
it
and
pulls-
that may have a color on it.
Okay.
Not sure if it's the red color that you're.
Are you using a red line format in Word when you sent it?
Yeah, strike through and track changes.
Yep. Yeah, it's just, so anything that is in that Word document when you're looking at it live is going to, like if you want to put something in it, it's going to put your review in and show it as a different color.
Okay.
So anything that's underlined is new language that's been added to the current code, or that's proposed to be added. Anything that is stricken out is proposed to be eliminated. And again, there are some comments in the right-hand column. There's some questions, talking points, some justification or explanation as to why some of the changes. So what this document does is this incorporates the comments that were received more verbally about the industrial landscaping. We talked about giving them alternatives to vegetative mulch, the type of plantings that have to be in it based on the road classification. It also incorporates some changes that were proposed by a landscape architect, those comments that have been in there. So to the best of my understanding, all of those comments are incorporated in a strike through and underline format. So it's a matter of, at this point, looking through them, indicating if you're in agreement with them, if there are any other changes that you want to do.
Have we been able to get any comments from landscapers, from the actual people putting the stuff in the ground? And I ask that because I have been asking, I've been talking to landscapers, and you know, this is where I know the planning commission gets defensive. They're like, we don't want to deal with Wasilla, but they won't give me a specific.
Right.
And so that's what I was curious if, and I was trying to get them to come testify tonight to at least say why they don't want to do it inside the city limits of Wasilla.
I had someone from a local greenhouse, and I believe either that, I think he said he works at the greenhouse, but he also does landscape installation. I let him know about the project that you're working on. I directed him to the code to get the draft, to get the comments that have been called out. I gave him a copy of the comments that were in the package from the landscape architect, so that he could look at that. If he had any additional comments, that he could share them with the commission, that I'd bring him forward whether he was able to attend or not. To date, I haven't heard anything back. We can certainly do a reach out to, people who have business licenses that do landscaping within the city limits and advise them of that. We haven't done it yet because we didn't really have any kind of a draft that we were looking at.
Okay.
But we can certainly do that to try and at least advise them of it and let them know that it's going on so they can provide input.
Would the rest of the commission members think that that's a good idea?
Yeah, because I've approached several landscapers here in the valley, and they're just heading into their peak season right now. So they would like to make some comments, and I've directed them where to get the information and to get a hold of Ms. Crawford. But
okay. Yeah, I know the landscapers are busy. The one project that I'm working on here in the city limits, they asked me just 2 days ago, can we do that next year? I said, I don't think the city would be real happy with that.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial to have them come in and provide some comments. Maybe later on we clean this up a little bit, but
So at this point in time, Tina, you would be able to, Ms. Crawford, you'd be able to push this out, and we are allowed to take our version and share it, correct? If my understanding, so the commission members know, you can take this version that was emailed to you and push it out there too.
Just be prepared to, if they give you the comments, take notes so you can share them with the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, there are a couple other changes. There's a couple talking points, and maybe we should just roll through those and not talk about the things that we've already talked about.
Sure.
And then there will be a few other changes One of them I'm working with the city attorney on. Hopefully it'll make this revision, but it may not. It may have to be a standalone. Has to do with the clearing that's allowed within the 75-foot shoreline setback. So that's some language that right now it's one paragraph. We want to provide more clarity. We want to make it clear as to what you can and can't do in there, what the process is if you want to ask for a waiver to be able to allow more, and if you were to be in violation of the code, what a revegetation plan would have to contain, and have it more prescribed rather than leaving it as a negotiation between staff and the property owner. So we want to work with Army Corps of Engineer and Fish and Game, EPA, because again, it involves the shoreline, which is under their jurisdiction too, to make sure that what we're proposing won't conflict.
On Wasilla Lake.
Wasilla and Lake Lucille.
Army Corps and Engineers doesn't have jurisdiction over Lake Lucille, do they? Archie? I was told they did not.
They're wetlands. They do have.
Oh, and there's wetlands on Lake?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I know on the west.
I agree there is. I just did, they were filled in at one point in time, so I was curious on whether or not people actually thought there were wetlands over there or not. So.
I know at the west end, those for sure were tagged by Army Corps of Engineer when people were doing clearing, grading, and fill.
Fill those lots?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say all of them have wetlands on them, but some of them do on Lake Lucille. And the majority of them, if not all of them, on Wasilla Lake do.
Okay.
So that's one thing that is not in here. You'll see that coming forward. But again, it's not changing the rules. It's just clarifying it, laying it out there so that the expectations are clear.
Okay.
That point behind Fred Meyer's, is that city property? They just cleared that whole point, and
You're talking just over the bridge, or just before you get to the little bridge? Over.
He's talking about that private property that's right behind Fred Meyer's.
The city.
It's behind Fred Meyer's. It's between the lake and Fred Meyer's. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that little property that's pigeonholed back there. Nobody knows it's there.
Okay, well, that's not something I'm aware of, but that is in the city limits. If you're talking about.
yeah, well, they were well within the 75-foot zone when they cleared that.
Ignorance is bliss.
So that would be a code compliance issue.
Yeah. Out of sight. Yeah, there's a private driveway that runs in there behind the between the pet store and Fred Meyer's.
Yeah.
That accesses them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I almost bought that property 5 years ago, and then I'm not sure who the current owner is now.
So highlight the changes.
Okay, so
we move on.
If you go in page 2, the first comment, it's one that we didn't specifically talk, we sort of talked about it, but I kind of wanted to make sure that the commission was in agreement with it. So I should add the line numbers to this. I will in the next version, so it'll be a little easier. So it's under the bottom paragraph, landscape plan. You can see the comment has a dotted line coming over to it. The code currently says that landscape plans have to be prepared by a landscape architect if the development's over 5,000 square feet and or the lot size is greater than an acre. So we had some conversation last time about not requiring a landscape architect. For larger developments, I still lean toward it makes sense. It's such a detailed plan. You have so much area, usually in several acres. It's kind of hard for an individual to do it. There's still that, talks about someone with equivalent experience. There's that option there. I've not had anyone ask for it except for one individual, and they did not have any real landscape plan experience, so they were not qualified. But what I'm seeing, and actually just this year is, and maybe a little bit last year, is small businesses going on lots that are just over an acre. It just seems to be that they're coming across these lots and they're putting something that's, the predominant thing is a coffee stand. They're about 500 square feet. They're buying 2 acres of land to put it on it. Well, the way it's written, because it's over an acre, it triggers a landscape architect. But yet the use in the area itself is small.
We put that architect clause in when I first came on the commission.
Yes.
Sounded like a great idea. but it's giving us great plans, but it's not giving us better landscaping. Because the disconnect is not the guy drawing the plan, it's the guy installing the plan. And so what's happening is we're taking, for the smaller people, and the big businesses, they have the pocketbooks, they're going to run that route anyways, I believe. They're not going to go with they've got too much money on the line to not do that. But the small business owner, not the small business owner by government standards of under 500 employees. I'm talking about the small business Wasilla, which is 5 to 10, maybe 25 employees, which is most of our businesses. To add $10,000, $15,000 is going to directly impact the product at the end. We're moving design funds from, because they're only going to have so much money that they're going to be able to put, and I know we can't have carve-outs for different people for different things, but I think we have to look at it as what's being developed, who's doing the developing, and do we need the architect? And I don't know if, when I've asked the question, I've gotten an answer that yes, we got better stuff, we got better designs, but we're not getting results out of it. So I don't think it was, in my opinion, with the pushback. And like I said, I don't have specifics, and I keep asking for specifics. It's like, don't give me generalities, because it doesn't work. Because all anybody does is get defensive, and we don't get anywhere. Give me specifics, give me action items that we can work on, and then we can address those legitimate issues. But the architect thing, I liken that to cost. And let people use it if they want, but don't require them to if they don't have to. But can we come up with some language that would allow us, like you said, architect or equivalent, somebody that can produce, because you want produced some type of design plans that can be followed, right? So can we achieve the same result through some language in what type of plan you're to receive versus who does it?
So previously, the previous code, just an architect that doesn't specialize in landscaping could draw up the landscape plans, because there was no requirement at all. A surveyor could draw it up, an engineer could draw it up. I think some of the unfortunate part of that is they don't understand the soils, the plant spacing, the type of species. You know, is this something that does well in partial shade or full sun? You don't get that expertise. So there is value to that, which I think is why the commission at the time went with the 5,000 square feet, because to be honest, most of our buildings are not coming in over 5,000. If they are, they're really large.
Really?
So this office building is over 10,000. That triggers a conditional use. But even Fix Auto that was last month, I don't believe was over 5,000, or it was right around that.
Okay.
That's a larger thing. What I see more common is a couple thousand square feet, 2,000, 2,500 square feet for a small freestanding business that goes in, or less. Or it's very large and it's, going over 10,000. There's not a lot of small mom and pops going in over 5,000, because I think it's just the cost of the building and you're higher up in the, as a business, you're looking for a larger space and you operate differently. The other associated thing, and maybe, if the commission wants to remove that requirement, if you do, it's also related to page 19, the comment on page 19 under inspections. And I think it addresses the chairman's concern about you're not getting the installation like you should. So one thing that did not get adopted as part of the requirement for a landscape architect was the requirement for after the plantings are done, that the landscape architect go out and inspect the site to make sure the soils are the right depth, that it was installed according to the plan, that all of that functions well, that the plants are the right type, that they're healthy plants, because that is their expertise. So that is something that was discussed. It wasn't included in the last draft, but it can be included in here, which should close that gap between getting a quality plan and a quality installation, because it puts the onus back on the landscape architect and the project manager to ensure that the contractor does what they were instructed to do.
but it also increases cost.
It does.
Okay.
And again, that's where, it's that balance of, smaller businesses, you're right, don't have as much money. And there already is a provision for someone who's, has experience doing this. Again, no one's come forward to ask to do that. But again, you don't see, I guess I can pull for the next meeting, maybe give you some ideas of the developments that we've had come in. Even the buildings that are old grandfather buildings that have sat empty and have been taken over, there are exceptions in the code that deal with that. It says to the greatest extent feasible, it doesn't require a landscape architect for that. So those buildings that are sitting there vacant that are being taken over aren't triggered for a landscape architect. So it does lower that cost when you're getting into an entry-level building. But certainly you can strike the whole thing. That's just the talking points about it.
Okay. I was just looking for some, because the idea you're getting a plan that is what you need. It's what we want, but at what cost?
And I know the cost is there. I'm actually dealing with a coffee stand now, and I'm dealing with someone else that's trying to hand draw theirs. They have the option to hand draw theirs, and we're into like 4th and 5th renditions of they don't understand that the 2 foot, the spacing, the quantities, that you got to label it. They don't know how to do a percent calculation, 15% of the lot. Some of it's, just kind of part of the regulations, and they're not equipped to do it. But it could be changed to a surveyor or an architect. I don't know that changes the cost that much.
Okay. But from a planning department, from your side of it, you would want to see somebody with a professional license doing the drawing.
If we're going to do that and keep that, I would want us to add the requirement that they provide an affidavit that they inspected the site and that it meets the plans that they submitted, and do the inspection at the end instead of someone from my department or code compliance going out and trying to say, was this even the right soil? Is it deep enough? Does it look like the trees in the ground at the right level? We're not going to have any idea. Okay. The only way we're going to know is when it dies a couple years later, or if it's dead by the time we get out there, which happens too. So either way, I don't think at this point I have, from a planning standpoint, I have a preference. We can leave it up to choice, but if we do require, we need to require that they also do the inspection.
Okay. Commissioners? Mr. Rubio, you're quiet.
I'm always quiet.
I know. So I keep calling on you.
I don't know. Like I said, I've talked about it, just the whole up to code. Small businesses, I mean, my building's 8,000 square foot. And between the landscaping and the parking, I mean, that was a hefty bill for, I'm a small business. So, I don't know. I lean different ways with it. I think that there should be something. I don't think that we need to have an official landscaper for architects for every single small business. But, like I said, I'm not set one way or the other right now.
All right. Was there any feedback on the comments that you got on types of trees, number of trees? And I guess, where am I going with this? My question to you is, what are the pushbacks that you get from these guys on the landscaping? Are there certain things that you're seeing that are repetitive that maybe we should address, that have to do with plant counts, size, things like that? Because I know that is part of it, because that's a direct relation to the cost.
So one of the things that I hear about, and actually if you go to page 5, that's the first one. There's a couple of them on that page 5, right near where the comment is, under minimum plant size. What I've heard is that 24-inch plants are hard to find. And because of, with the winter time and the greenhouses grooming them to keep, by the time they groom them, when it's time before spring, then they're no longer 2 feet, so they don't comply. So to try and get you'd have to contract with a greenhouse ahead of time, is what I've been told, to get them to grow to 2 feet and then hold them over the winter and then not prune them. so that they meet that requirement. So there was a request to go to 18, said they're more common, that's the more common size to
Okay.
find, and that the cost is significantly less.
Okay.
Just that difference. So that was a change that was proposed. The other thing was the code in that same paragraph lumped all trees together, 10 feet or 2-inch caliber, whichever's taller or greater. We're changing it to taller. But there was the comment about evergreen trees. They don't measure out the same way, and evergreens are hard to find at 10 feet. So our previous code allowed 8 feet, so that was added in here that they be 8 feet at time of planting, just across the board. And so they say those are more readily accessible. The request was for 6 or 4, but they don't grow very fast, and I can point you to some sites to where we're still seeing things that look like immature trees.
Yeah,
years down the road.
4 to 6 inches a year.
Yeah, and it's like, and they measure to the top of that tallest stalk that comes off, that one feeder that comes up. That's what the height's measured to.
Right.
So the bulk, a 6-foot tree, it's really 4 feet tall with one tall leader. So if you go to 8 feet, you're getting about a 6-foot tree with the 2-foot leader. So that was a change. That was some of the things that was brought in. The other thing was talking about mulch. And let me find that section.
Yeah, that was another one, because, you know,
Yep. So
mulch is a little bit harder to come by, and a lot of the landscaping around town is rock, and has been rock for years, because I was watching the guys at Fred Meyer's cleaning out the rock with the big vacuum truck.
that'd be a code compliance issue too, because since 2006, rock was not allowed and vegetative mulch was required. But I've only been here since 10, so my plans have required mulch, but sometimes they sneak in rock. So it's kind of an issue. But if you go on page 6, again, there's a comment out to the side that'll take you to that area. So the actual header is ground covers and mulch. So I did some research, and it was, again, following up on some comments, that they be allowed to go with some low-lying ornamental perennial plants instead of mulch. So like in landscape beds.
Like creeping evergreens?
Yes, some kind of creeping plant that stays down there. Or they can do mulch. There's somewhere else, I'm not sure if it says in there, we added for industrial zone lots that are not fronting on these major roadways, that they be allowed to use landscape quality rock or grass in place of the mulch and the ground cover. It also goes with, it's not on this particular page, but there were changes to industrial that removes that perennial flower requirement and goes with the street trees with some clustering of shrubs around them, which is a lower cost for an industrial, but still gives you some improvement on that streetscape with the trees. I can point you to that. But it was introducing that, and then once we get into the perimeter planting beds, let me direct you over there. So that starts on page 8. That's where you start seeing the language being incorporated in to give them some alternatives. And to also, one of the comments that came up at the last time was requiring a mix of type of shrubs so that we don't have, and flowers, so that they're not all blooming at the same time, that are not all deciduous, that there be some evergreens mixed in there. So there's some language in there dealing with that. I think it's a note out to the side. Yeah, out to the side comment says TC6. Also look at providing an alternative to allow clustering use of some ornamental perennial grasses, flowering shrubs in places some or all of the flowers. And then on our commercial sites, so like, just for lack of a better example, Palmer-Wasilla Highway or the Parks Highway, to be honest, I haven't had many business owners that want grass in their landscape beds because of the maintenance. You know, the creeping, you got to mow between it, that kind of stuff. They don't seem to like that idea either. But there have been some landscape architects that have proposed some ornamental grasses. I know Raising Cane's, if you go through their drive-through, has those almost kind of looks like sea oats from
like
south,
tall grass, or
yes, and it has the little seed, and it actually keeps it all year round. It never has a different color change, but it's something of visual interest. So incorporating those in, which provide that ground cover and fill that space. So even if you do have mulch requirement, then it's just more at the base of shrubs, or instead of this run of a 10-foot strip with a lot of mulch. It would be easier to maintain, or at that point, then they could incorporate some landscape rock. What's not very attractive, unfortunately, Panda Express is dropped in landscape rock around their drive-through. And they choked out all their plants. And so it pretty much is just a rock bed. And that's not the visual attractiveness that you're looking for the community. You're looking to have that greenery. And I know it's only 5, 6 months, 7 months out of the year that you have that, but it's
4.
well, I don't know.
3 guys. 3.
Going 3.
May, June, July, August.
It's a little late this year.
5 to 6.
Just got green 2 weeks ago.
Depends on what you choose. So if you have an evergreen, it's all the time. The potentillas are already
Yeah, I'm chopping one of those down at a building here in a couple weeks.
Very nice.
Little bugs got it, or are getting it.
Yeah. So that's where it's introducing the idea of having some alternatives and variants, or variety of things, and that's where it starts breaking the industrially zoned lots based on what their road frontage is. If you're on the actual major roadway like Lucas Road and Mystery, your requirements there versus being up in Discovery Hills off Shaylin where you're not visible from the road would be different, because again, you have less vehicle traffic. You're not a major corridor through the city. So that's where it starts incorporating that. And I think those are the biggest things. There's a lot of, like I said, tweaking of things, trying to go with more clarification, clarity. We added the requirement that industrial lots screen their outdoor storage, regardless of whether they're next to residential or not. It just creates a more attractive from the street as you're going by. We've had some that have had those requirements, and if you go down Mystery, Insurance Auto Auction has all the evergreens there, and then they have the slatted fence. Kendall Ford's going to be putting up a slatted fence on the back side. You won't see it unless you drive around the back, but it's part of a screening and buffering. So I think those are the major things. And again, putting the inspection back on the landscape architect to do an affidavit that it does comply and that it was installed properly. And then adding some definitions. There was some requests for definitions and clarification. Some calculations as to when it says 15% of your parking area has to be in landscaping, what defines the parking area. So we're adding that kind of language in there for clarity.
Okay.
But those are the substantive changes.
Okay.
And
all right.
Again, if the commission comes up with anything else, or if we get any additional feedback, we can certainly add that to it also.
I think the hope is to, I know you're adding things in here, but I'm hoping that the outcome of this is to simplify it and streamline it more so than anything else.
Right. And the goal is, the other thing was, yes, to allow more flexibility in design. That's one thing I'm working on. So here's what was proposed to me, and I don't disagree with it. I think it makes perfect sense. So we prescribe how many plantings per feet, and that may be a bit of a knee-jerk to what we received before. To say, okay, you don't come up with a good plan, it doesn't accomplish the goal of the landscaping regulations, so we will map it out for you. So it's perfectly clear exactly what you need, but maybe it's too much now. We're revisiting the idea. We're trying to build the flexibility to where you can do some clustering and groupings, while at the same time not allow you to have a 100-foot run along the road with no vegetation in it. So instead of this even distribution of plantings, it is visually attractive to have a grouping of shrubs, a tree with some shrubs around it and some flowers on the outside of the shrubs, and then either grass or some ground cover or some decorative grasses or something else in between, instead of just a run of mulch, and then another grouping and things like that.
Something a little bit more, something more chaotic versus analytical.
Yes, to allow the creativity.
Yes.
But yet still not leave the loophole that you can have something at this end of your 300-foot lot and something at this end and nothing in the middle.
Okay.
So drafting that language will take a little bit of time, but the goal is to allow more flexibility while giving you the clarity so that you can come up with a price quote. You can design it to be something that you enjoy.
Okay. All right.
And this is all going forward, so none of this is going backwards to grandfather or existing businesses?
Oh, yeah, existing businesses are grandfathered until they trigger compliance with the code. So an addition, something that requires, if you change from retail to restaurant, which requires more parking, that triggers you. There are a few things that trigger you to come into compliance, but the bulk of the businesses, whatever they have today, if they're consistent with their approved permit, they can keep that forever.
It's your tenancy change.
Or your structural
Yeah.
changes. So yes, grandfathering will be in place for existing businesses.
And then, and existing lots, older buildings have some leniency as well.
Yes, the code does have factored into it. So I dealt with just recently in the last year, Wasilla Auto Mall wanted to do an addition. It triggered compliance with today's code. The code says to the greatest extent feasible. So he has a large asphalt parking lot that does not have the 10-foot planting bed at the edge of the road, nor does it have landscape islands. So the code does not anticipate, nor does it require you to dig up the asphalt and put landscape islands. However, if there's a patch of dirt that is there that has nothing in it, then you would now make it a landscape island. Or if you're at the end and you're adding more parking spaces and there's some leftover land that does not have asphalt, you would put your landscape. So it's to the greatest extent feasible you come into compliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else for us?
That's all that I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions? Mr. Melvin?
No.
Ms. Rubio?
No.
None.
Okay, I have nothing else. All right, then I will entertain a motion to exit committee of the whole.
Make a motion. Commissioner Sage will make a motion. Exit committee of the whole.
Commissioner Seals seconds.
Any objections? Any objections? Any objections? Hearing none, we exit committee of the whole at 7:31. I was doing my best Ferris Bueller imitation. All right, at this time we're to unfinished business. We have no unfinished business, so move on to communications. Did anybody have any questions, comments about what was in there? All right. Then we had our permit information. Okay, so let's go to audience comments. We'll have three minutes at this point in time. If there's anyone wishing to address anything on your mind, things that happened tonight, landscaping, just not the price of tea in China. Since you've already signed in, would you please just state your name for the record?
Thank you, sir. For the record, Janice Pritchard. I spent about 30 seconds just to give you a little bit of a story. Where we used to live, they built a Walgreens. It was totally complete, ready to open. Come to find out, they had built it 30 feet onto someone's private property. Cost Walgreens a lot of money to buy 30 feet of somebody's property. So I take exception when you made the comment that you didn't think that the commission could at this time ask the developer to move the building. It would take the architect approximately 10 minutes to redraw these plans. It's all done on a computer. And so to relocate that building away from the edge of Wasilla, you could ask them to do that. They have not begun to break ground yet. The trees are still there. They haven't done a single thing on the property. And to redraw the plans is like 10 minutes on the computer. So yes, you can. But having a building that abuts right there on the street that is not very wide, and you said yourself that there's going to be a lot more commercial coming in there, that means you're going to have to put sidewalks in there. Not to mention, if I'm correct, does the city not have easements like from the center of the road to a certain feet into a property? That also would need to be taken into effect. You're going to have to put sidewalks in there at some point in time. Okay, so otherwise, if that building is sitting right on the edge of Wasilla, you're not ever going to be able to put a sidewalk in there because the building's going to be there. So to ask the developer to move it, yes, you can. This is a conditional use. That's why we're here, is because it's conditional. It's conditional on a number of items. So one of those items could be conditioned upon the fact you need to move the building away from the edge of the road, okay? So that would be my one thing that I take exception on your comments to, that you couldn't ask the developer to move it, because, yeah, you can. They haven't done anything yet other than drop the plans. Plans are easy to redraw, especially nowadays with what they have on with computers. It's not some poor little guy on an architect table redrawing with pencils anymore. So to redraw it is very easy to do. And if you're going to be looking to the future with a lot more commercial in that area, then you need to really look to the future and realize you're going to need sidewalks. You're going to need more drainage. You're going to need a whole lot of other things that are not in this conditional use or special use permit or whatever y'all call it here. So look at it now, not later on when it becomes a problem, because it will be a problem in the future if you let them put that building right at the edge of the road.
Anyone else?
For the record, Tim Johnson. The discussion on landscaping was very interesting, okay? I know I've spoken to another city council member, and we're a little bit concerned, the two of us, and that we're spending a lot of time on things like landscaping, all right? Whereas the city does not really seem to have a plan going forward as far as to making Wasilla to be really a Class A city. We only have a slight understanding, and some roads have gutters. Very few have sidewalks. We don't really have a plan for lighting of our community, and yet we continue to develop these projects. And to me, you're looking at like this particular project, we're not going to be asking our developers that much money. But on the other hand, when we come back in the future and try and put in a sidewalk, that's a huge amount of cost that we as the city will have to pay. Now, I came from Las Vegas, which was the previous community that I lived in. Is what the city planning had done is they said simple. Any development has to incorporate the infrastructure that is going to be needed. Now, in this particular case, I just thought it was interesting because the last lady mentioned sidewalks. In fact, there is a sidewalk. It ends right on this particular property that the city spent a lot of money in a tunnel that goes through to the lake. Right now, I've got a sidewalk that goes absolutely nowhere. All right? So, you know, I see that we need to start to think bigger and make our city to be a Class A city. I want to see Wasilla to be the premier community in Alaska. Not just thinking about one aspect or another. Let's open it up. Open up our thoughts. Make it a Class A with our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. God, you're the last person in the room, so I was just seeing if you wanted to come forward and speak. Okay. All right. So that'll end our public comment portion of the meeting. At this point in time, staff comments?
Mr. Chair, the only thing that I'll state here is that the June meeting was originally scheduled for June 15th. I will be in training that week, so I believe that Tahara's already emailed all of you and gotten confirmation that we rescheduled the meeting to June 22nd.
Okay.
At this point in time, the only thing on the agenda for June is the landscape
Okay.
plan. So we may get something between now and then. The deadline will move out a little bit later since we move it out, but basically by the end of this week I'll know if there's anything else. But at this point I don't have anything projected.
Okay. City Attorney, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. No comments from me.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, comments?
No comment at this time.
No comment.
No comment.
All right, and I don't have anything further to say. I think I've said enough for the evening, so we are dismissed at 7:39.
Good evening, everyone.